It was only a matter of time before we got to this point, right? After nearly 4 years of war, a war in which Russia's primary ground strategy has been to hurl wave after wave of soldiers directly into Ukrainian defenses, manpower is no longer just a concern. It is becoming an existential problem. There is only so much death a country can absorb before it begins to cripple itself. Russia has now crossed that threshold. Too many Russians have died in Ukraine. The losses are no longer survivable, and the rate at which Russia is bleeding manpower has become fundamentally unsustainable. What was already the Kremlin's most severe crisis has now escalated into something far worse. Russia is staring down a future where it may not have enough people, not just to fight its war, but to sustain the country itself. The war in Ukraine has turned into a death engine for Russia. Mortality levels are rising to heights the country has never experienced before. This crisis was highlighted in a January 8 report by Al Jazeera, which cited statements from both Ukraine's president and the commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces. Their assessment was grim. During the final 3 months of 2025, Russian losses surged dramatically. Those losses suggest that Ukraine's already formidable defensive strategy has become lethally effective, so effective that Russia is now losing soldiers at a rate it cannot replace. According to statements made in early January, Russian fatalities have been climbing by roughly 5,000 per month since October 2025. In December alone, Ukrainian forces claim to have eliminated 35,000 Russian troops, with video evidence backing those figures. November saw roughly 30,000 deaths. October, around 26,000. These numbers are not casualties. They are deaths. That distinction really matters, you know? It can change everything, right? For context, reports earlier in the war suggested that December 2024 was Russia's costliest month up to that point, with nearly 49,000 casualties, but that figure included wounded soldiers, men who could eventually return to the battlefield. That's definitely not how it is anymore. You know, things have totally changed. What has changed is not just the scale of Russian losses, but their nature. Russian troops are now being killed outright at far higher rates than before. Dead soldiers do not rotate back into service. And when the war ends, if it ever ends, they do not return home. This compounds a demographic problem Russia already had long before the first shots were fired. Ukraine's military leadership echoed these assessments, stating that December 2025 marked a critical milestone. For the first time, Ukraine's unmanned systems neutralized roughly as many Russian soldiers as Russia managed to conscript in that same month. In plain terms, Russia has reached a point where its forces in Ukraine are beginning to shrink. If Ukraine maintains this level of effectiveness, Russia will no longer be able to replace what it loses. The numbers simply do not add up. Russian military intelligence figures suggest that average monthly recruitment in 2025 hovered around 33,500 troops. Even Moscow's target for 2026, just over 34,000 recruits per month, falls short of offsetting the roughly 35,000 deaths Ukraine claims it is now inflicting monthly. This really puts us in a tough spot, doesn't it? What a mess. Part of the reason lies in Russia's relentless fixation on capturing key Ukrainian cities, particularly Pokrovsk. In that single sector, Russia has concentrated well over 150,000 troops. Mass assaults lead to mass deaths, especially when soldiers are ordered to repeatedly charge hard in defensive positions designed to kill them. But you know what? The main reason behind these crazy losses is something totally different. Drones, right? They're everywhere these days, capturing stunning views and making life easier. Ukraine's rapidly expanding drone warfare capability has transformed the battlefield into a killing zone. First-person view drones, guided with precision and recorded in real time, are now responsible for a staggering portion of Russian fatalities. Ukraine hasn't just jumped on this tech bandwagon, they've really turned it into a game changer. Drone operators are rewarded for confirmed kills through a gamified system that allows them to earn points, which can be exchanged for more drones and autonomous vehicles. This system has expanded rapidly, with participation multiplying several times over the past year. At the same time, Ukraine has scaled up drone production to extraordinary levels. By 2024, both sides had reached a capacity to build around 1.5 million FPV drones annually. Ukraine has since pushed even further. With increased funding and streamlined approval processes, Ukraine is now producing more drones, more varieties of drones, and more specialized systems than ever before. The results are visible in the data. Monthly drone strikes have more than doubled within half a year. By the end of 2025, Ukraine was inflicting drone-related losses on Russian forces at a scale approaching 100,000 troops over 3 months. This could just be the start of something really exciting, you know? With new funding secured and production expanding, Ukraine is positioned to intensify this pressure even further in 2026. Russia's response has followed a familiar pattern: denial, deflection, and bravado. But you know what? Actions really tell a whole different story, don't they? Russia has begun equipping reserve units, forces originally meant to guard rear areas, with heavy weaponry and preparing them for frontline deployment. These are not units meant for sustained offensive combat. They are being repurposed out of necessity. This exposes vulnerabilities elsewhere, including along Russia's borders, where reduced defenses could invite future Ukrainian operations. The manpower crisis is really pushing the Kremlin into some tough spots, you know? Either Russia funnels what remains of its manpower into sustaining battlefield operations, or it abandons its ambition to build strategic reserves entirely. It just can't do both, you know. It's gotta pick a side. Plans to create dozens of new divisions and brigades have collapsed under the weight of casualties. Only a fraction of the intended formations have materialized, and those that exist are under strength, under-equipped, and structurally weakened. Artillery, air defense, armor, and logistics are missing. Infantry-heavy units are being pushed forward with light vehicles and minimal protection, making them even more vulnerable to drones. Russia needs tens of thousands of additional troops just to meet its own stated force goals. Those troops do not exist. Recruitment is faltering. Financial incentives are shrinking. Regions once offering massive signing bonuses have slashed payments to minimum levels. The money that once lured volunteers is drying up. As a result, Russia has turned to increasingly desperate measures: coercion, deception, and the exploitation of foreign nationals. Promises of visas, residency, and citizenship are dangled in front of vulnerable people. In some cases, threats are used. Many of those recruited only realize what they've signed up for once they arrive in Ukraine. This system just isn't sustainable at all, you know? We really need change. The issue is way bigger than just what's happening on the battlefield, you know? Russia's demographic crisis is now intersecting directly with its war effort. Birth rates are collapsing. Entire regions are shrinking. The population is aging. And the war is accelerating every negative trend. Russia is losing people faster than it can replace them, both militarily and demographically. This really makes you think, doesn't it? What's the real deal here? How long can a country continue a war when it is running out of soldiers, running out of recruits, running out of money, and running out of people? The Kremlin just keeps pushing forward, no matter what happens next. The numbers are right there, and they really don't lie, you know? Russia's war in Ukraine is no longer just a military conflict. It is a demographic catastrophe in motion, one that may shape the country's future long after the fighting ends. Ukraine is fully aware of what's happening, and they're not backing down. That's exactly why the pressure just keeps building up, you know? It's intense.